Spring is here, isn't it? The sun is shining so beautifully, the birds are chirping, and you, my friend, are feeling fresh. You're feeling like, you know what? I can see all this dust and dirt around me. It's time to start spring cleaning, baby. I'm going to organize everything. As we say in the South, you're on a tear. But there are some major mistakes that many of us make when we attempt to start out our spring cleaning journey that really are just setting us up for failure instead of success. I'm going to share with you in today's video a few tips, a few things that you need to avoid when you start your just wild and crazy spring cleaning journey, right? The things that get us excited as an adult. But I want you to avoid these things because they're going to make it harder and make it so that you can't actually complete your spring cleaning, and nobody wants that, okay? Everybody always tells you what to do. Well, I'm going to tell you what not to do because that seems to be what I'm actually an expert in. If you take away one single piece of advice from this video that is actually like the most important thing, and that's why I'm putting it here, okay? Some people, they like to bury the lead, okay? They like to make you watch the whole video before they tell you the most important thing. I'm not going to do that to you today. I'm going to tell you the most important thing right now. The biggest mistake that most of us make, including myself, is that we think that we can organize our way out of the chaos. We think that, well, if we just buy enough bins and containers and pretty organizing things from Target or the Container Store or Amazon, that we can organize our way out of the utter chaos and mess that is our home, that is overstuffed and likely needs to be decluttered. Especially when it comes to my clothing and my kids' clothing, that is always like the very first place that I start, because no matter how much I try to organize my kids' dressers or closets or my own, if they are just overflowing with stuff, there's just no way to organize that in a way that it's actually going to stay clean. You can't stuff everything in there if it doesn't actually fit. So for me, the first step of spring cleaning and wanting to organize different areas of my home is to start by decluttering. You know, this can feel overwhelming, and oftentimes people feel like they have to declutter their entire house, and you have to go on like this huge decluttering journey that's months and whatever. You can do that, absolutely. But I also don't want that to feel paralyzing to you and for you to not start because you don't have the time or the energy to invest in like a whole home declutter right now. What I would say is that to pick the area that you use the most, that you frequent the most, or the area that is bothering you the most. So for example, if your kitchen is just, it's the area you're in the most, it's overstuffed, there's too many things in drawers aren't closing, you've got all this stuff everywhere in cabinets that you're not even using, start there. But if there's another area of your home that maybe is bothering you more, if there's just something about it. For me, it's almost always my closet and my bathroom because those are the spaces that I am in constantly, twice a day or more every day. And it's also like my home base where as a mom, I go to like, woosah, right? Calm down, take a bath, whatever. So I want my areas, especially the areas that I'm looking for a little bit of like decompression and stress relief. I want those areas to be clean and organized and decluttered. So those are the areas that I start. Where you start is totally up to you, which kind of brings me to the next thing that I would encourage you to avoid, which is, well, biting off more than you can chew. You know, sometimes we fill up our plates at the buffet and then we sit down and we get like, I don't know, quarter of the way through the plate and we're like, what was I thinking? Like my eyes are clearly bigger than my stomach. Well, the same thing happens to us, especially when we feel invigorated by the season and we want to start cleaning. We want to start cleaning things out. We get so excited. Maybe you watch a lot of like cleaning and organizing and decluttering content and you get super excited, but it's way different to watch someone do something on YouTube, especially at like 2 or 4 times speed. You're watching something in likely under 30 minutes that probably took this person at least a full day, if not days plural, to achieve. So be very careful that you are not starting out with too big, right? You're not starting out with too much. You're not biting off more than you can chew. Because what happens is that, like I said, you drag all this stuff out and suddenly realize a few hours into it that you're totally out of gas, you're out of energy, you're out of time. Then you like shove it back in the closet and you're like, oh, I'll finish this later. And you never do. It's such a pain in the butt and something that ends up becoming more of a problem for you rather than a fix, you know? The idea here and sort of the secret to almost any large project that you want to achieve, if you really think about anything big that you want to achieve, you have to break it down into smaller tasks. So before you just say, I'm going to declutter my whole house or I'm going to clean my whole house for spring, great. That's the high level, like big thing. But how can you break that into smaller tasks, into smaller blocks of times or rooms or areas, right? So, can you say, all right, I'm not going to deep clean all the bathrooms. I'm going to start with deep cleaning one bathroom, or I'm not going to be able to wash and, clean with a Q-tip every single window in my entire home. I'm going to start with just the windows in the playroom. I'm going to start by just cleaning and dusting the baseboards of the living room. Make sure that these tasks that you are breaking the bigger task into, okay? So the smaller blocks that you're breaking it into, these things need to be achievable in a reasonable amount of time. My recommendation would be something you could achieve in under an hour. Maybe even like 45 minutes, because oftentimes as moms, our lives and plans get derailed and sidetracked. So to be able to carve out, 6 hours worth of work every day is likely just not going to happen. So being realistic, as tough as it can be, right? Because sometimes, well, if you're like me, you want it done now. In fact, you want it done yesterday. So the idea that, well, I'm only going to do this. Well, listen, friend, you don't have to only do that. When you finish that one smaller task, if you still have time and energy, do another one. But this way you get to end every day with feeling like you completed something, you got it done, and you get to like sort of check that finished box, which is going to make you feel good. It's going to give you that little dopamine hit that you are seeking, and it's going to motivate you to keep going and to keep doing. So it may seem like you're slowing down the process, but in reality, you are likely speeding it up overall and making it more likely to actually happen and get completed because you are being realistic about it and not setting unrealistic goals and starting out with just too big of a project that, despite the fact that your heart may be into it and your heart may want to see it done, your body and your time and your schedule is not going to let it get done like that. Do yourself a favor and set yourself up for success. Set it up so that it's way more likely that you're actually going to get through this and get it done than to peter out and bite off more than you can chew and end up feeling bad about yourself and feeling like it's yet another thing that you set out to do that you didn't achieve. Because I am definitely guilty of this, but I can tell you that over the years, I have learned how much I am getting in my own way with this. All right. So one of the other mistakes that many of us make is that we think we need all of this fancy equipment and fancy cleaning tools and gadgets and things. I fall down the rabbit hole just as much as anybody else of watching all of these like TikToks or Reels. Well, I'm not on TikTok, but Reels and YouTube and Shorts and stuff where they're showing like all of these cool gadgets and cleaning gadgets and things that make these projects, the idea anyways, is that they would go faster or easier or smoother or whatever. But in reality, again, we're sort of hobbling ourselves and never actually starting because we're thinking, all right, well, I'll do that when I have this. I'll start doing this. I'll start organizing this. I'll clean this. I'll do the shower. I'll deep clean the whatever. When I have that tool that I saw on Amazon or that thing that I saw somebody share. The reality is that as much as those things, again, are fun and great, you don't actually need them in order to spring clean, deep clean, in many cases, declutter, organize, the things that are actually going to make a difference in your day-to-day life as you continue throughout the spring season and into summer. It's not going to require all the fancy equipment. And we know this because, well, our parents and ourselves and generations before us, we've all survived and managed to keep a clean house without this fancy equipment. So you can absolutely do that. Now, there are, sort of staple cleaning items, and I have a few of my own favorites that are like, these are the things I always have on hand. I will link you down below in the description box to some of my cleaning favorites. But the necessary things are really quite few, right? We need some rags to clean with. You can clean with hot water and vinegar. You don't have to have fancy cleaners. Now, I, for one, can't really stand the smell of vinegar, especially like all over my house. But there are ways to have cleaners that don't require you to buy 50 million different things. There are things that will make different cleaning tasks easier and go faster, but they're, again, not always necessary. So be sure that you're not allowing your list of wants to overcome your ability to actually get stuff done, that you're not letting that stand in the way of getting through your spring cleaning list, and allowing it to make you think that you need to spend a bunch of money on stuff in order to be able to then spring clean. You likely have everything that you need to get started and to get going. And it's not just cleaning products. It's that same idea of buying a bunch of bins and organizers and shoe organizers and new coat hangers and all of the different things that we see other people have and use that make their lives easier. And we're like, cool, if I get that, it'll fix it. But the truth is that it won't, and that you can get going, you can get started. You've got to get rid of the stuff. You don't want to waste money buying organizers to organize an area that you likely just need to get rid of most of the stuff, right? Like, why spend more money and organize stuff you don't even actually need or want in the long run? So try to be as discerning as possible. This is something that I've had to work on over the years because I get starry-eyed about the pretty organizing things. I love them. I think some of the gadgety stuff is really fun, but there's a difference between something that you want to try and you think is cool or, whatever, versus something that you actually need in order to get the task done. So as long as we can have a clear line of delineation between the two, then we can successfully spring clean. Now, the last mistake that I want you to avoid, I speak from experience, y'all. I'm not somebody that's going to come on here and tell you that, like, I do everything perfectly, so let me tell you exactly how to do it. These are the things that I have learned. We often, what I call, squirrel away things for some imaginary time in the future that we think we're going to need them. And this is the hardest part of being able to declutter and spring clean, is not knowing if I'm going to need this thing again. Should I keep it? And then you've got to find a home for it. I am especially guilty of this when it comes to baby clothes and like baby gear and stuff, because even though we don't have plans to add any more children, I always think about like, but what if, especially as an adoptive family, there's just things that could happen that, I don't know, we might end up with another child someday. But the reality is that if that very, very slim and unlikely thing were to happen, then I will be more than happy to scurry out and buy some new baby clothes and some new baby gear. In fact, you might have to sew me to the floor to keep me from doing it. So I think it's just, sometimes it's the emotional attachment to the things that keeps us from getting rid of them, passing them on to somebody who could actually use them. So that's the kind of stuff that I feel like we have to deal with our own like emotions about it in order to let go of things, rather than just being very mindless about tossing things into containers and boxes and saying like, well, I might need this someday. I think we need to have that kind of like sort of come to Jesus moment with ourselves about how realistic am I being about this? How much value does this thing actually have? Is it something that I just might need? Like, what are the odds that I'm actually going to need this thing again? And if I were to need it, how much skin off my nose is it really going to be to, buy a new one and replace this thing? If that sort of random possibility time in the future were to come to pass and I was to need it, is this something that I'm going to be kicking myself that I'm like, oh man, I should have saved that. I can't believe I didn't. Or is it something going to be like, oh, well, yeah, I used to have one of those. I don't anymore. It's okay. I'll get another one. For most things, that's the case. It's not likely something that is a large, expensive thing. It's often little stuff that's not very expensive, not sentimental, but it seems kind of practical. Like those are areas that a lot of us struggle with getting rid of things. So having that like inner moment where we like have our inner come to Jesus about stuff like, why am I holding on to this? What's my attachment with it? How much does it really matter? And letting go of things. To me, that is one of the hardest areas, but one of the most important areas of being able to actually like spring clean and declutter and get our homes ready. It's such like a fresh start, new season. Most of us love that feeling and we look forward to it so much. So I would encourage you to avoid some of these mistakes that we've talked about today so that you can have success with spring cleaning. I promise you that when you're on the other side of that, that like lightweight, free feeling that you have in your home is going to feel so good and you're going to be so proud of yourself.